Our today's lesson is on combining transformations of the graph f of x equals x squared. Now from the previous lesson, we know that f of x equals x squared is a parabola that has a U shape, where the axis of symmetry is the y-axis. And we know that when this is negative, it's going to have that shape. G of x, you can obtain the same graph with this formula if you know what each part represents. For example, this coefficient a tells you how far to either shrink it or to stretch it. So you can put shrink or stretch. Stretch. And this number here, h, tells you how far over to the left or right to move the graph. I'm going to put left or right. And k, you shift up or down, depending if it's positive or negative. For example, let's say I want to graph f of x equals x plus 2 squared minus 4. All right, so look, we know a in this case is just 1, so we're not going to stretch it. It's going to stay the same. It's going to be the same graph. But the only difference is we're going to move to the, be careful, we're going to move to the left. I know it says plus, but remember when you solve quadratic equations, when you say equal to 0, you got to take the opposite. So when you see addition in there, that means you're going to go to the left 2 units. And this means you're going to go down 4 units. So we're going to graph the same graph, f of x equals x squared. But the difference is we're going to go to the left 2, and we're going to go down 4, and then we're going to recreate the graph. But it's going to keep the same preservation. It's not going to be wider. It's not going to be smaller. So let's see what that looks like. Now here's the original graph, f of x equals x squared. And let's see how this looks like. So the vertex point is 0, 0 here. But if I plug in 0 for f of x, I get 0 plus 2 squared minus 4. So first, let's find the axis of symmetry. We have the vertex is 0, 0. We're going to move to the left 2. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and I'm going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, make a point. And that means this is my new axis of symmetry here. So this is our axis of symmetry right here. And you want to pick points to the left or right of this. And what we're doing is just taking this parabola and we're going to shift it down here. So now this point now is negative 2 and 4, negative 4. This is our new vertex points as opposed to 0, 0. Now if I plug in 0, I get 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. So 0, 4. If I go to the axis here and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4 is another point there. But I can count over 1, 2. I can count over 1, 2 squares here and make another point. And it's going to go the same direction just like this one. Let's try one more point. Let's see. Let's say x is 1. This is -1, -2. Let's try -1. There's -1 here. So we have -1 plus 2 squared minus 4. So that gives us -1 squared minus 4. -1 squared is 1. So 1 minus 4 gives us -3. So that just puts us right here. And the opposite will be right here. So if I were to do that graph, it's going to look like this. So the original one's the blue one, and the one that's transformed is the black graph. So it's the same graph, but you just shift it over 2 units and you go down 4. Okay, this one, notice we have a 2 here. That means we're going to have to shrink it by 2. And we're going to go to the right 4 and down 1. That's what that means. Because A is 2, and we know H is 4. Well, -4 in this case, but that means you have to go to the right 4 units. And we got to go up 1. So it means you got to translate. It means up 1 to the right 4. And we're going to shrink it by 2, like we did in the previous lesson. All right, so we have the graph of f of x equals x squared. And what we want to do is shrink it by 2. And recall from the previous lesson, f of x equals 2x. So we're going to shrink that down. So we know that when f of 0, x is 0, then this is going to be 0. So this point stays the same. But when f of x equals 1, now x is 2. So if I count over 1, I go up 1, 2. And if I go to the left, -1, I'm going to count up 1, 2, make a point there. When f is 2, x is 2, I get 2 times 2, that's 4. So if I go over 2, I count up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And likewise, if I have -2, you count up 1, 2, 3, 4. If x is 3, then I'm going to get 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this would be a little smaller graph. And what we're going to do is we're going to shift that to the left, to the right 4. So you're going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to go up 1. So this is going to be our new point. And you want to pick points to the left and right. So you know the first point only goes up 1 unit. So it'll be like this. And then you go over here, it's going to go up 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be a little narrower, but it's going to go over to the right 4, and it's going to go up 1, because that's what the graph tells us to do. And it shrinks down by 2. All right, graph 1/2 times x minus 2 squared. Notice that we don't go up or down on this one, because this is 0 there, but we're gonna stretch it by 1/2, and we're gonna go to the right 2 units because of this -2. We're gonna go to the right 2 units. We're gonna stretch by 1/2, but you don't go up or down because in this case the constant is 0. All right, so we're gonna graph f of x equals 1/2 x minus 2 squared. This tells us to move to the right 2 units. We're not going to go up or down because the constant is 0 here. So look, the vertex point's at 0, so I have to move over 2. So I'm going to count over to the right 1, 2, and make a point. And that's my also line of symmetry there. So this is what separates that parabola in half, equidistant. So let's say I plug in 0. What happens? When f of 0, what do I get? I get 1/2 0 minus 2 squared, which is 1/2 times -2 squared, which is 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So when x is 0, y is 2. So I go over to the y-axis and I count up 1, 2. But I get the same thing if I plug in 4. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And I can draw the graph from here. It's going to be a lot wider, but it just shifts over 2 units to the right, but it stretches by 1/2. Okay, graph f of x equals negative x minus 1 squared plus 2. This negative tells me that the graph is going to be shaped this way. It's going to reflect over the x-axis. But we're going to have to shift it though. We're going to go to the right 1 and have to go up 2. So let's keep that in mind. Here's the original graph. We're going to graph this. So let's start with the vertex point. It's 0, 0 originally, but now we're going to go to the right 1 and go up 1, 2. But now the graph, this point is going to be at the very top of this parabola. It's going to graph down because of the negative. And this is our new line of symmetry right here. So the y-axis is x equals 1. X equals 1. All right, so let's pick numbers to the left and right to figure out the new points. Let's say I plug in 0 because to the left of here is 0. So I'm going to say f of 0 equals negative 0 minus 1 squared plus 2. Well, 0 minus 1 is -1. I square that. But don't forget that negative's out here. That's +1, but then the negative stays because the negative outside. So you have -1 plus 2. That gives me 1. So when x is 0, y is 1. So here's my vertex point right here. I get 0, and I go up 1. And I can do the same thing on the opposite side of the line of symmetry. I can go over 1 square and just go up 1 here, because it has to match the other point equidistantly. All right, let's try another one. Let's see. This is 1, 2. Let's try it when x is 3. You're going to have a negative 3 minus 1 squared plus 2. Well, 3 minus 1 is 2. And when I square that, I get 4, but don't forget about the subtraction sign there, the negative sign. So it's a negative 4 plus 2. And that gives me negative 2. So when x is 3, I get negative 2. So I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, and then go down 1, 2. And I can do the same thing on the other side, because I have 2 units away from the line of symmetry, so I can count over 2 units out of the line of symmetry. And the parabola is going to look like this. All right, this concludes our lesson for today.